Hey, what's up, everyone? Kino here, and just watched another new episode of House of the Dragon. This is the sixth episode of season one. Again, I don't have the episodes like in front of me right now, so I don't know what it's called, but it's the sixth episode, and a number of things happen in this one. So we jump forward in time. That's the big thing. Rhaenyra is now older. She's played by a new actress, as is Queen Alicent. Both look like their previous actresses, so I thought that was a good casting call. They seem like these could be the older versions of them. Again, I thought it was kind of weird that Lena goes from little girl to full grown woman, but Alicent and Rhaenyra don't. But regardless, we jump forward in time. Rhaenyra has three sons, so she's giving birth at the beginning of this episode. And they put a lot of emphasis on the women delivering, which I thought was kind of unique because that's not something we typically see in most movies and stuff. We come in right at the end as oh, you know, the baby, and they're feeling great and stuff. But I think a lot of emphasis is put in this series on the kind of suffering that women go through from childbirth, which I'm sure they do. I'm sure it's a very rough process. So again, it's cool we get kind of a spotlight on that. Yeah, she's got a new son, but this son looks nothing like her husband, Sir Laenor. None of her sons do, and they're all bastards of her bodyguards, or Harwin Strong, who's the son of the hand of the king, Lionel Strong. We saw him briefly, I think, last episode, but we didn't get a whole lot on Harwin. But Laenor is gay, and they have an arrangement where they sleep with other people, but. Her children look nothing like the husband, and everyone's kind of aware of this. And I mentioned this before during my the first video I talked about when people were upset that the Valerian family or Valerian family, it's hard to pronounce those words, but people were upset that when they were cast as black people, they're like, it's gonna mess up the storyline. I was like, no, this works perfectly. Her children are white, and they have no kind of black features at all. So it's really clear that they're bastards. Given that, they look like bastards, and people realize that they're bastards, but they can't say anything because you can't just directly call that out. So it works perfectly fine in the story. Alicent at this point knows Rhaenyra is a cheater and stuff, and doesn't like her kind of lapse in morals and values, and also views Rhaenyra as a threat to her kids based on what her father told her. Now we get to meet her kids in this episode too. They've grown up from babies. We have her oldest son, Aegon, who's this is kind of a weird kid. He's jerking off in the window, at the beginning, and it's why? What was he doing? I think he's just kind of a weirdo. Doesn't seem like an awful guy yet. I don't know if he'll ever be an awful guy. Depends on how they choose to interpret his character. But Alicent is planting seeds in his mind of hey, you're going to be king one day, not Rhaenyra's kid. So you got to view her as a threat. We also get Aemond, who I'm interested because he's actually kind of the more prominent brother in the story of the Dance of the Dragons. So I'm excited to see where they go with him, and how they choose to portray him. So, but we'll see all that in the future. In this episode, like I said, basically everyone but the king knows that her children are bastards. He refuses to believe it because then he'd have to have Rhaenyra killed or exiled or something. And so there's this deep kind of conflict there. And at the end of the episode, Rhaenyra decides to leave King's Landing and go to Dragonstone. It's the castle that's given to the heir to the Iron Throne, so it's her castle. It's where Stannis is in Game of Thrones, actually, but so we got some interesting developments there. We've got Larys Strong, Larys Clubfoot, Strong, the guy with the limp. He's the other son of the Hand of the King, and he has his father and brother killed, so he can be the Lord of the House now. We didn't really get to see any kind of interaction with him and his father, so it's doesn't have a huge impact there. But we also have Daemon across the Narrow Sea in Pentos. He married Laena Velaryon, who is the brother of Sir Laenor. They have 2 daughters together. She is riding Vhagar, which is the biggest and oldest dragon alive to this day. Balerion, the dragon of Aegon, is dead at this point. And so Vhagar is the oldest living dragon, the biggest one. Vhagar's been disappeared for a long time. Again, she learns to ride him off screen, so it's we're robbed of a little bit of that impact. And she's pregnant with another kid, but then I don't quite understand what happened at the end there. Basically, she was giving birth and it wasn't going well, and it was presumed she's gonna die, I guess. So she chooses to have Vhagar roast her alive instead. So I guess it was her kind of taking control of her death. But again, we get 1 episode with her and she's gone. My biggest criticism of this show so far has been really that we're not given time with any of these characters to get to know them in a meaningful way. And I understand because the story takes place over such a long time period that it's hard to get invested to any one of their characters. And also the fact that the books that the show is based on is not like the Game of Thrones books. It's not where it's we're seeing the events unfold in real time with dialogue and stuff. It's basically a history book that's written after the fact, and it's in the year 101 this person died. It's dry. So there's not as much character from the source material for them to draw upon. And so I feel a lot of these characters are kind of lacking. They don't get the proper screen time to flesh them out. Like I said, Harwin Strong's only dialogue is in this episode and he dies. So it's how am I supposed to feel about his death when I don't even know him really as a character? He's just kind of Rhaenyra's dildo at this point. Which might be the point of the whole thing, But and you could argue that the main focus is on Rhaenyra and Alicent and the characters supporting them, but still it's if you want me to be invested, take more time with these characters. And you could argue that the series is already going kind of slow as it is, so it's we don't have time to spend with all these people, especially if they're going to end the season on the start of the Dance of the Dragons. They kind of have to go at the pace that they've been going. But like I said, I'm not really invested into these characters. I'm oh yeah, it's cool cinematography. It's cool, the world building. There's a lot of little world building details from the Song of Ice and Fire series. Aegon's involvement in the Century of Blood. And I was that's really cool that they're referencing that. I really enjoy that they pay so much attention to the history that the main series forgot about. But even still, we'll have to see. But yeah, for now, it's nothing's bad for me where I'm oh, this is shitty, but it's just oh, it's kind of just mild, I'm not that into it. I'm not that opposed to it. It's just kind of it's a good hour of entertainment, but I don't spend my week thinking about this show in the same way that I do something like The Wire or Sopranos or something. I know that's an insanely high bar to set for a show, but even still, even Game of Thrones, I was obsessed with Game of Thrones. I don't think I'm going to be obsessed with House of the Dragon in the same kind of way. But it is a competently made show, and I'm excited to see where they go with it in the future. So, we'll see. So I'll leave it at there. Thank you guys so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next reaction coming next week. Talk to you guys then.